Hey everyone. So today we're going to talk about our 3039R, which is one of 3 different tractors in this series. It's the latest version. Now if you have the older version, which is referred to as a 3X20, because you've got like 33, 35, and 3720 maybe, or maybe I have that wrong where it's 33, 35, 39, I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's roughly the same tractor in lots of ways. But there are some differences as well, so not exactly the same tractor. The stuff that I'm going to be developing are going to be for the latest version, and the reason for that is because on any of the versions that are no longer being made, it's a little bit tough unless there's a whole lot of them out there. Now for the 3X20, there are a whole lot of them out there, and I think most of the things that I'm working on will be very, very close. And one of the examples is the loader cylinder. So this cylinder and this cylinder. Now this is a 320R loader. There is on the modern 3R series tractor, there is a 300 loader. And I don't know the specific differences. I think one of the differences is this cylinder here connects directly, just like on like a 1 series or 2 series. And it doesn't lift as high. And generally speaking, if you have the opportunity, go ahead and get the 320 versus the 300, but you know, sometimes you get a good deal. I don't exactly know why they make both of those loaders. I'm sure there's some cost savings, but for the customer and for John Deere, but I don't know, it seems overcomplicating. But that said, we're gonna have, this is gonna kind of be the year of the 3R, I think. 2024 is gonna be. So we're gonna have cylinders coming on both front and, but for the 320R, now I wanna say that the 300CX loader is basically this loader. I may be wrong about the actual numbers, but on the 3X20 models, there is a loader that uses the same cylinders and it has the same format. So that's gonna be, anything that's developed for this will work for that. If you have a 300 loader or the smaller loader that was on the 3X20, then maybe you will not have cylinders. You won't have cylinders immediately, but honestly, I have to work within the things that are the most popular because I don't want a bunch of inventory that I can never sell. But like I said, the year of the 3R, I think, is what this is gonna end up being. We've already got, and this, when you're watching this, this may not be out on the market yet, but if they're not, they'll be shortly. Those are flat face quick couplers, as you can see with the color-coded rings. There's no dangly things, and those are connected to pressure male fittings. So your loader is no longer going to be trapped or in such a way that you can't actually connect it. There is a very special product for the cab version and this should work on 3X20 as well as 3R tractors. It is probably going to be the most expensive product that maybe ever Hydros Plus has, but it's going to be, while it is the most expensive potentially, it will be surprisingly inexpensive to those of you who have the cab tractor. I think you'll agree with me, but I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. So we're going to do that. We're going to do cylinders, and we are going to do hydraulic pump. And within this video, since I'm no longer trying to make nice, highly polished 20-minute videos that don't get too long, we're going to try to talk about all of this stuff in a single video. So cylinders, we already kind of touched on these, hydraulics, and I'm going to pull this loader off because this loader has a little bit of controversy. Controversy is not the right word. People have feelings about this loader. And the reason they have feelings is it's different than the modern loaders. And what I mean by that is this design, which they've used, I believe, on, I think my 2210, which is the very first John Deere subcompact, had a loader like this, but what I don't remember is whether or not, I think it did, it basically put the pressure on the front of the tractor versus putting all your pressure here, like on the, let's go over here, this tractor. This is, well, this loader isn't on every tractor. As you can see from here, it goes to the kind of the nose and it almost goes straight down, and then it kicks back out here at the bottom. This is the 1 series, kind of the same thing, down, kicks out, which I mean kicking out. But my point is, this loader design puts all of the pressure right here in the middle of the tractor. Don't worry about that stuff. Same for here, nothing on the front, all the pressure is here. That's where it gets its strength for the lifting, and there's no supports that go from the back or the front. Here it has the loader stand, but the bumper is just a bumper in this case. On this tractor, the bumper is not just a bumper. See, ooh, how do we get in here? Right here, this is the loader, and as you can see, the way this parking stand is made, it goes so that it basically puts the pressure, it connects to the front of this, and it puts the pressure on the very front of the tractor. Now, I haven't done enough testing to try to decide, there goes my air pump. I haven't done enough testing to know if putting the pressure right there versus putting it here is different. But the one thing that makes this different, and I'll show you this in just a minute, is when you're lifting with this loader, here, you're actually not pushing down. With the other tractors, when you lift, you know, it's pulling forward, but it's supporting all the weight here. What this mast is actually doing is pulling up. It's keeping the loader from flipping up this way, and this is where you're pushing down. So that's different, and I don't know if it's better or worse. It's just different. Now, this loader, it kind of comes to the nose, but then it kind of goes straight out, and it really doesn't kick out at the bottom any. And I think that's mainly because it doesn't have to, because it goes out a little further. The distance between the front of the tractor and the bucket is more. This is actually more like the Kubota L series, which I happen to like the fact that it's out further, but that geometry is going to make it where it doesn't lift quite as much for the same pressures and the same hydraulics or surface area on the hydraulics. So that said, let's go ahead and get started and look at, got that tare, got my peak on. Already warmed up the tractor a little bit earlier. So let's start her up. We've got our Hydros Plus Lift Plus gauge here, and what you can do, don't buy this gauge, I'm talking about this, don't buy this gauge as your hydraulic pressure, a way to measure hydraulic pressure, but if you buy the gauge, you can use this, because it's not, the reason not to buy it for that is it's not the most cost-effective way. There's more cost-effective ways to do this. But if you have this and you want to have this so that you know how much pressure you're putting on the front of your tractor and how much weight you're lifting if you do the calculations, it will also work as a pressure relief setting gauge. So you can use it that way. So we're going to go at idle, and I'm going to curl back all the way, and we're going to lift. All right, so 2,300 PSI with this loader. These are 2-inch lift cylinders. 2162. Let's go ahead and go on up to wide open throttle. 2,700 RPMs for us. Right at 2,500 PSI, which by the way is the pressure relief setting or suggestion. So 2272. If you go to wide open throttle, and about 100, roughly 100 pounds less, I think, if you are at idle. So that's a pretty close, whether it's idle or wide open throttle, it's pretty close, which is good. Let's let these guys, let's the guy down here. Now, on this test, if you haven't seen one of the tests I've done before, as you can tell, we're at about 24 inches in front of this pin. This pin is where you'll get a lot of your initial lift capacities. If you're looking at the specifications, it'll say 2,000 pounds at the pin. And then they usually have another one that's like 20 inches in front. In my case, it's about 24 inches in front. And we're also gonna be 24 inches off the ground here at the 24-inch mark, so it's almost square. Here will be 12, 13, 15 inches off the ground. So at the pin, that, you know, and if we were to take this and hook it here, you would get more lift capacity. But this is really kind of where it makes sense to me. And just generally speaking, with this tractor at the specified hydraulic pressure, looks like you can lift about 2,200 pounds off the ground consistently and move it around. Now we're going to change that, of course, and it doesn't mean you have to lift 2,200 or 2,500 or whatever we end up making it be able to lift, but you get to decide, do you want to lift it or do you not want to lift it? So that's enough of that. So we've got 2,500 PSI, and I'm just going to leave it at that. That's what the factory spec is. Now, can this tractor handle more than 2,500? Certainly. I know that the pumps that I'm working on are rated at about 2,800 PSI working pressure. All of these fittings like this, that's not a fitting, but these are going to be rated, typically cylinders are rated at 3,500. These are rated at 3,500, or this is 3,250, as you can see there, working pressure. And working pressure just means that's what they can do all day, every day. So it doesn't mean it's some type of max. Usually the max is about 4x what the actual working pressure is, but that's not always true. So the max, the burst pressure for this may not be 3x, but the burst pressure for the fittings are definitely 3, 4, 6x in some cases. Now, hoses, they're easy to replace, and O-rings as well, nobody's worried about those. You're really worried about, is this gonna do some kind of damage to your tractor if you increase the pressure? And the answer is probably not, but it's never no. But it shouldn't. Really, if you find something that has happened to your tractor as a result of increasing your pressure, let's say it was at 2,500 and you went to 2,800, it's probably just found something that was going to fail anyhow, just hadn't failed yet. Look at that. Oh, that's like, oh, it's just an ugly weld, I guess. All right, we've got the loader off here, and we'll get to the hydraulics, but while we've got the loader right in front of me, let's talk about it just a bit. So the first thing I want to talk about is what we've got coming from a cylinder point of view. The challenge we have with these cylinders, and I should have shown this probably, might have been easier when it's on the tractor, is the size of this barrel. This is a 2-inch bore. It's 2.3 or 4 on the outer dimension. But over here, we don't have that much room between the parking stand and where this has to come in. And that's important because there's a couple of things that go on. Not only do you have to have room to bring this bore into this area that's tighter, you also have to have the room for the bore to go up in here. Now, the way I solve for this typically is I move this back and make that part of the connection, and then the bore will stop more like here, where today, because it can go inside, it stops more closer to here. You can see that weld, that's kind of the end of a bore typically. Let's see if you can see it better here. Yeah, this weld here, that's the end of the bore, and this is really just a connection. Well, that's going up into this flange here, and as you can see, there's no room to make this any significantly bigger. And that's one of the challenges, like with the NSL or the MSL loader for the 2R and the 3E. The reason they don't have curl cylinders on those is because they have these weird, funny flanges that come up, and the only way you could get between them really is to replace them, because your stroke only happens within the bore. The bore is from about here to right about here. It's not all the way to the end, but it's pretty close to the end. So what we had to do is we had to bring this back so that it clears this, unless I have a feeling nobody wants to chop a big piece of metal out of this. And at some point the chopping would probably have some structural integrity issues, but probably wouldn't be that bad. But we do want to bring this back for the clearance, and we got to bring it back probably, can't remember, but it's like over an inch. But we want to keep the same stroke. Well, if you take it from here, you got to add it here. Luckily, we have just a little bit of room to add, but only that much room. So that's what we've done. The prototypes are on the way, and we'll see if we lose anything. We're not going to gain anything on this loader, and I don't think anybody's really asking for more lift height on this particular tractor, but we're going to have to use any gain that we could have gotten for clearances on this end. So, tilt, totally different story. I'm a little further away on the tilt cylinders. As you can see, we have this mechanism here, and what it does, it allows you to have a shorter cylinder up here, but it gives you the ability to dump further because of this shape here. You can actually take basically this and put it straight out in front, where if you had to use this cylinder, the furthest you could go would be not straight out in front, because you would run into this. So, working on, and what that probably means, because we're going to run into the same thing here, if we don't make a modification to this part, then we were going to lose some curl back. It may be acceptable how much we lose, but my goal is to lose 0. And so in order to do that, we're going to have some additional pieces, most likely. So, still working on that, but it's coming very soon. Let's talk about this loader and the difference on this loader compared to the modern, what I'll call the modern loader. Well, let me take you over there and I'll show you what the modern one does, and then we'll compare it to this one. All right, so here is what the modern loaders, it's how they generally work. Now, if you get up to 5 and 6 series or beyond that, I don't actually know. But for 1 series up through 4, with the exception of the 3R series, they work like this. They have a kickstand for the quick park ones, and it's just a hollow tube, has no function when it comes to loader operation. It's simply for taking the loader off. Then you have a loader boom and I'll call that a boom, or loader connector and mast here. And basically, when you lift, it's going to torque this mast and boom together forward, which is going to take the weight off the rear end of the tractor. That's where all the counterbalance comes from. As you lift, that's where everything goes. You push down, it pushes the other way. But it's basically stationary here, and it's got one connection point on each side. Same thing goes for the 3E tractor there. It just doesn't have the quick park functionality, but right in the middle of the tractor, you lift, it's going to try to put that loader mass forward. If you push down, it's going to torque it backwards. In contrast, this loader has 2, maybe you would argue 3 connection points. You've got this big bar here that lands itself on top of this, and that's when you lift, it's going to push down on the front of this. Also, it has those hooks at the bottom, meaning if you push down, it's actually going to grab down here and pull up. Now, this is probably what is at least a little bit confusing for those who don't have a 3R, or you haven't looked at it extensively, is that these loader masts, they obviously perform a purpose, but it's not the same as the modern loaders where everything connects right here and it's torqued based on that point. In the case of this, a lot of the actual structural integrity and when you're lifting things gets transferred into the loader stand, and then at the end up here on the front. These basically hook in to these replaceable pieces, and for the most part, when you're lifting, they're going to be lifting on the bottom of this. This is basically keeping the loader mast where it is, so it doesn't come up or move, forward or backwards. But it's not in the same way. It's not grabbing onto this and torquing it the way the modern version is. it's really more of a lift and a push-pull than, and the pushing down on the front of the tractor happens as a transfer of weight through the loader stand to the very front bumper. So it's a little different. I've talked to a handful of people that have mentioned that this loader seems to have these masts are a little bit wiggly. I'm not seeing that on this one yet, but I'm sure that's probably something that's going to happen. I honestly don't know what's causing it, and I plan on looking at it a little more detailed. But one thing to just call out before I jump to the next topic here is because we have these 2 points, right? On the modern one, it's all connected here. So when you push down, it torques this way, and you pull back, it torques this way. On this one, when you push down, it puts the weight here and it pulls up here. And then when you push down, you know, it does the same thing. What you actually have to do on this loader, because the parking stand is part of the function of the loader, is they have this spring here that puts the constant tension. And then these loader connects that I showed you when I took it off, all they're doing is making sure that the tension on the spring, when you load it, when you put the loader on, you'll preload the spring, that you keep the tension on that spring so that whenever you are driving around, it's going to be pushing against itself, and it's not going to be bouncing and jostling around. Now, I have not looked at the manual to see if there's some number of turns that's recommended here, but I do expect that over time this spring is probably going to relax, and you may see a little bit more a loss of tension, and that could be causing the wobble, but I'm not going to pretend that I even know what might be causing it, simply because I've not seen it on this tractor, and that's probably because the loader just doesn't have a whole lot of time on it. So we'll stop there for the loader. It is interesting to me that they're keeping this model versus transitioning it to something else. There's possibly a reason, but sometimes I hear from people a lot, you know, the engineer did that for a reason or whatever, and that's probably always true, but if you take all the accountants and executives and all of that out of the conversation, then I'll believe that the engineer actually did it for a good reason. Their reasoning for why they did it may have been they were told to do it a particular way, or told to come up with some creative method that solved these other requirements that none of us have ever heard of. Probably cost is one of them we have heard of. But you know, it doesn't necessarily make mechanical sense, because a lot of these people making the decisions on these tractors, they don't even own these tractors. And that's why when you see something that's funny, it's because the engineer, while he or she did an amazing job on the task they were asked to do, it really wasn't the task that, the right way to ask the task or the right way to, you know, to approach the problem. So again, it's not that the engineers are doing anything wrong when you see something goofy. It's just, we don't know the whole story. All right, let's talk hydraulics. And on this tractor actually has interesting hydraulics, and it's a little different than some of the 1 and 2 series tractors, but largely it is the same. I say it's a little different. There are some attachments, I think, for the 3R that have some additional plumbing that you won't see on the 1 and 2 and 3E series tractors. But so for hydraulics, we get all of our supply here. And if you're not familiar with hydraulics, really what you want is, when it comes to supply, is you want a very low restriction. And that's why this tube is so large for the amount of flow that actually goes in here, is because if you try to pull faster than it can arrive here, you'll get cavitation. Now, generally these are well over the size that you would actually be required. And a lot of that is because you'll get a little bit more noise if you have a supply tube that's a little bit too small. But that said, we've got this manifold here that goes to this, the steering pump, and then this being the implement pump. And the implement pump goes from here, as you can see, and it moves on down back into the tractor, and it doesn't matter that much when it comes to what I'm trying to do, which is make this pump larger. Now you can make this pump larger, but you're going to run into some challenges here in just how much larger you can make it. And one of the ones that I'm going to run into, that on the very largest pump that I'm looking at, which is going to be probably in the 17 gallon per minute range, is these tubes here have to be rerouted. So they're going to be in the way of making this larger. Now I've got another pump that may be a candidate that's going to be, it won't be 17 or 18, it'll be like 14 or 15 maybe, I can't remember exactly. But if we cannot get this routed properly and out of the way, then that's the pump we'll have to go with. I'm hoping we could go with the very largest pump that is available. Now, the reason, well, I don't have the pumps in the shop yet, but one of the reasons that pretty much everything at Hydros Plus is kind of at a standstill is because we have a CNC tube bender coming that can make these bends. Like I can make these bends even from a prototyping point of view, you know, just with hand tools. And if for some reason the pump arrived before then, that's what I would have done. But ultimately, you cannot bend these by hand and get the consistency that you need to even connect to here. Even though these are hoses, which that makes it a whole lot easier to be connecting into. But there are so many tubes that I have now with all the different products that it made sense to invest in a CNC tube bender. So really excited about that. And by the way, it doesn't just do hydraulic tubes, it also does exhaust tubes. And so that's going to be a part of the overall strategy in making sure that we keep our prices as low as possible and that you get the highest quality product as possible. But that said, that's where we're working towards on the hydraulic pump, a whole lot more flow. And what we're really aiming for is to getting into that skid steer level, you know, for some of the standard flow skid steers. We want to get into that level because this tractor can actually wield some of the skid steer implements. And you talk about a 1 series, you know, even if we could get 18 gallons a minute, which I'd love to do, what would you do with 18 gallons a minute? Because the 1 series can't even pick up a lot of the skid steer attachments. This tractor, once we get bigger cylinders here, will be able to wield those larger implements, and you'll have a whole lot more capability if you so choose. So the last thing I'll talk about is probably the most exciting, but it only applies to the cab tractors. And this will be the 3X20 as well as the 3R tractors. But if you haven't guessed already, it's gonna have to do with this. Now, the reason it has to do with this is, look how much slack is in this thing. Even, that does nothing. It doesn't move anything. So you've got all this play, and then you can move it. It is the jankiest setup I've ever used. And it's because there are cables, push-pull cables that are in here. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, you need to adjust your cables, I'm gonna say you're wrong only because I feel like I agree with you in that you should be able to adjust this slack out. But when you do, like right now, I'll tell you, like this is as far over as this will go. That means I don't have regen on this loader, because if I push it far enough that it has regen, then when it comes this way, I don't have enough throw to curl the bucket at any speed that makes sense for me. So in order to get full throw for curling the bucket this way, I have to make sure that, I mean, that's as far as the cable will go. And this is, I don't know, I won't go on a soapbox rant about just how terrible this is. And like this, that is the detent for the float. But I mean, that is hard. Yeah, you can't do it over there. You can push far enough here, and it's still janky, but you know, you get it. Separate video. We're going to address this, and I'm super excited about it. And I wish, the way we're going to address it, I wish we could put that on every tractor we have, even though it's going to be pretty expensive. But as expensive as it's going to be, for the people who've spent their hard-earned money on this tractor, I don't think you're going to think it's expensive, because it is. It should fix all of this jankiness, but you will have to have a cab, because how we're going to do it is going to require that some portions of it are out of the weather. So I'll leave it at that. If you're a 3R owner, hope that's really exciting. Now, I say this could come to other tractors, but you're going to need a cab, and this is really the first tractor that has what I would call a proper cab. Yeah, the 1 Series has one. I don't think there is one for the 2 Series or the 3E Series, but the 1 Series could end up being a room issue. But that said, the 1 Series is good. Like, I love using with Hydros Plus. It sounds like a plug, but it's not. It makes all the difference in the world in just how nice your joystick works and how good you are on the loader. It's a very smooth valve, and the valve's right there. So this valve is actually way down underneath, and it's remotely located. So, and I mentioned the CNC tubes. That's another application that I'm going to have to use for new hydraulic tubes. So a lot of plumbing is going to come with that, as well as electronics and other things. But that said, I will do a separate video that hopefully you'll tune in for. If you have not already subscribed, please consider. If you're a 3R tractor owner, I think, if I were a 3R tractor owner and watching Hydros Plus, I may not have subscribed by now. Only because, you know, there's no dedicated products yet except the quick couplers, as of this video at least. But if I'm a 1 Series, a 2R, 3E, you know, I'm subscribing because I want to know what's coming. But 3Rs, I can see you holding out. If you're 3R now and you haven't subscribed, you're going to want to subscribe. Very cool things coming this year. And 2R, 3E, 1 Series, still more cool stuff coming for those. So if you happen to be watching and you haven't subscribed, consider that, please. It'll definitely help us get the word out on all the cool things that are coming for the subcompact tractor world. That's it for today. Questions, comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching.